Hello, everybody. It's Chris Widener, and I'm so thankful that you're joining me here today. Um, you can jump on over to chriswidenercoaching.com if you're looking for a little bit of help. You can jump on over to chriswidenercoaching.com, schedule a free 30-minute consultation with me. We'll see if you might be somebody that could benefit from some coaching. So that's fantastic. chriswidenercoaching.com. Thanks for joining me each and every day. I try to get to it each and every day around noon Eastern and Monday through Friday. And so today I want to talk to you about why you need a mentor. Why you need a mentor. I got to tell you, I have been so blessed over the course of my life with mentors. When I was a young man, I had some amazing mentors. The guy that ran global operations for AT&T, the CEO of Mars Candies, the number 2 guy at Prudential Worldwide. I think he was the COO or something like that, CFO. Anyway, and then when I got into the speaking world, from 2002 until 2007, I spent 7 years working with a guy named Jim Rohn. Many of you know Jim, R-O-H-N. Most people know him because Tony Robbins talks about him all the time, because Tony gave him, or Jim gave Tony his very first job when he was 17 years old. So I wrote Jim's last book, a book called 12 Pillars. Zig Ziglar, I co-hosted a television show with Zig for a couple of years, and then I worked with John Maxwell for a couple of years as well in the early 2000s. So I personally know the benefit of having great mentors. And I think most people would say, yeah, a mentor would be great. And they are great. And I just want to kind of give you a few ideas to think about in regard to why a mentor is great. Now, a mentor is usually an older man or woman. I don't mean they're necessarily old, but they're 15, 20 years older than you are. So if you're 20, a 40-year-old could be a good mentor. 35, 40-year-old could be a mentor. If you're 40, a 55, 60-year-old mentor would be beneficial for you. And so what's interesting is that the main reason I believe that a mentor is great is they've been where you've been already, right? So I have a guy who's in my coaching program, and he's 40, and he's got, I think, 3 or 4 kids under the age of 8 or 10 or something like that. Well, all my kids are gone. Our youngest is 22 now, and oldest is 34, and they're all gone. They're out of the house. I've raised children before, so I can tell them all sorts of ideas about raising children. I have built some great companies. I've sold companies. I've made a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money. And so I've been there, done that. And so it's nice for people who are just going into those kinds of things to be able to, get some advice on somebody who's already gone through it successfully. When I do my coaching for speakers, I've been in the speaking business since 1988, 2,500 speeches all over the world, Motivational Speakers Hall of Fame, named one of the top 10 sales speakers in the world by Success Magazine, one of the top 100 leadership speakers in the world by Inc. Magazine. Global Gurus just last year named me the 17th top sales speaker in the world. I've been there and I've done that. And so I can give people advice and mentoring on what to do and what not to do. In fact, the speaking world has changed so much since the early days that most people think they should do it one way. And I tell them, no, that's not the way to do it nowadays. The beauty of nowadays, it's actually far easier to build a speaking business and to earn money in the information business. I call the speaking business information business because it's not just speaking, it's audio programs and courses and books and retreats and all that kind of stuff, coaching, group coaching. The number one reason to have a mentor is because they've been there, done that, and they will save you every penny that you pay them as a mentor or a coach, because they're going to cut your timeline down. What you might have taken 3 or 4 or 5 years to do, you can do in a year. They're going to save you money. In fact, I used to think about starting a coaching program called Dr. No. And every time somebody pitches you on something, you call me and I say, no, you shouldn't do that. No. And maybe it's a $20 thing, $20,000 thing or something like that. And I go, no, you shouldn't do it. And you've saved $20,000 because you shouldn't have done it. I had a guy hired me to help him write his book one time. And he said, yeah, I've had some people, I've paid some money and helped me write my book and publish and blah, 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 and didn't work out. And I spent a lot of money. And I said, well, how much money did you spend? He goes, oh, I don't even want to tell you how much money that I spent. And I said, no, come on. I just want to know if you're going to hire me to help you out, and tell me, what'd you spend? $450,000. 400. I could have referred him to a guy right away that literally the guy would have just said, here's my idea for a book, and $75,000 would have gotten you everything: ghostwriting and editing and publishing and marketing and the whole thing. I'd have saved the guy $375,000. So you want to be around people who already know what they're doing. If you're getting into real estate, hire a real estate mentor. If you're getting into, athletics, hire a physical trainer. Whatever you're looking for, it's always good to have somebody who's been there and done that. So what are you looking for in a mentor? You want somebody who's older than you, right? But older doesn't necessarily mean more experienced or more knowledge or more wisdom. So that brings us to the second one. You want them to have more experience, knowledge, and wisdom. You want to know that they know something that you don't know. That's very important for a mentor. Make sure you're picking the right mentor. In fact, if you want to get into investing in real estate, have a mentor who owns 20 apartment buildings and 14 houses and has flipped a dozen houses, somebody like that that's been there, done that. So you want to make sure that they have that. You also want, I believe, I used the word earlier here, wisdom. When we're younger, we have a lot of knowledge. As we get older, that knowledge, if you're looking for it, turns into wisdom. And I was talking to my son about this the other day, and my son said, what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? And I said, okay, here's a good example. You live next door to a family. They've been there for 10 years. You've been there for 10 years. They're not moving anywhere. You're not moving anywhere. You're going to probably live next to them for the next 20 years. He decides to put up a fence, puts up a fence, and you go out and you look at it and you realize he's built it 6 inches onto your property. Now, this is knowledge. He built it 6 inches over on my property. That's illegal. The zoning laws require that he keep it on his property. And the law would totally justify and support me in making him move his fence back 6 inches. That's knowledge. You know that to be true. Wisdom says it's only 6 inches. Do I really want to go to war with this guy that I've been a neighbor for 10 years, and I'm going to probably have to be a neighbor for another 20? That's wisdom. Let it go. It doesn't matter. I don't even use that part of the yard anyway. That's wisdom. You want people who can help you rightly divide what's going on. Most people, when you're younger, myself included, one of the things I love most about getting older is that my knowledge is turning into wisdom. Because most of the time when you're younger, you just have knowledge. You don't have that kind of wisdom. You want somebody who's wise. You want somebody, another one is who is a good listener. One of the most important things for me as I mentor others and coach others is I need to listen. I need to find out what's going on in their mind. I need to find out what's going on in their heart. I need to know their history. I need to know. So when somebody hires me to be their coach, I send them a personal confidential profile. And what it is they tell me everything about their life. In fact, on that form, I tell them, I'm going to ask you questions about your entire life except your sex life. Don't care about your sex life, but I want to know where you were born, what your parents are like, what your relationship with them is like, what it is now like, your finances, your education, your family, your marriage, your children. I want to know everything. And I'll give you an example why. I had a woman who hired me probably 10 years ago now, and she was the president of a supplement company. They had 100 employees, one building, and the company she was the president, CEO. The owner was one guy, and he was about 75, and this one was about 50. And so she made about $500,000 a year, and life was good. But she hired me for coaching. And on about our second or third call, she said, "Can I ask you a different question today?" And I said, "Sure. What is it?" She said, "Well, I'm having a problem with the guy that owns the company." I said, "Okay, what is it?" He said, "Well, he gets kind of angry every now and then. Or if I make a mistake or something like that, he kind of chews me out." And she said, "So now what I do is I run up to my office, I lock the door, I don't answer his calls, and I don't, respond." She said, "I'm a 50-year-old woman who makes $500,000 a year, president, CEO of a good sized company. Why do I do that? She's like, I'm a strong woman. Why do I do that? And I said, did you not read your confidential personal profile? She goes, I not only read it, I wrote it. I said, you don't remember the whole section on how your dad was a yeller when you were a little girl, and when you were 7 years old and your dad would start yelling, you'd run up to your room and hide under your bed? And I was on the phone, but I could almost hear the light bulb turning on. And she said, I can't believe that. I've never made that connection. So I said, well, here's what you need to do. You need to go get some counseling. I don't do counseling. I could do counseling. I used to be a pastor for 14 years, but I don't do counseling. Go find a counselor who can help you deal with that. So she not only had the coach that she hired, but she also went and started going to a counselor and solved those problems. But I would have never known that had I not read about her and drawn out that information and then listened to her. You need somebody who can listen really well so that they can give you that knowledge and they can give you that wisdom. So I would encourage you, if you've got somebody in your community, somebody further along than you, that's great. It could be somewhere where you hire them to help you, or it could be somebody you just take to lunch once a month. If you're looking for somebody who's been doing a lot of coaching over the last 30 years, I'm your guy. All you have to do is go to chriswidenercoaching.com, read through that material, and then register for a free one-on-one. It's just you and me, no obligation, no cost. And we'll sit down and see if you could benefit from some coaching and some mentoring. And so be sure to do that. With that, I'm going to let you go. I hope that you have an amazing day for the rest of the day, and I hope that you're blessed by God, and that you have some great divine appointments this week with people who God's putting into your way to be able to meet and to work with and to encourage and to challenge and to learn from and all those kinds of things. So with that, I'm going to tell you goodbye. I hope you have a great week and the Lord bless you. Bye.